Imagine a soldier thousands of miles from home, stationed in a tense region overseas, while his or her family back in the United States feels the ripple effects of rising prices, job insecurity, and shifting political priorities. Foreign policy decisions, especially economic sanctions, aren't just lines in a diplomatic playbook. They shape the day-to-day lives of ordinary Americans, including the men and women who wear the uniform. Economic sanctions are one of the U.S. government's most frequently used tools to influence the behavior of other nations. They can include trade restrictions, asset freezes, bans on financial transactions, and limits on technology exports. The stated goals often involve pressuring foreign governments to change policies, punish human rights abuses, or respond to acts of aggression. While the headlines focus on international targets such as Russia, Iran, or North Korea, sanctions also carry indirect consequences for the domestic economy and for the people connected to defense and security institutions. When Washington imposes sanctions, global supply chains shift. Prices for fuel, raw materials, and consumer goods can rise. Exporters lose markets, and American companies that once traded with the sanctioned nation may see revenues fall. For military families already balancing tight budgets, these economic changes can mean higher grocery bills, more expensive commutes, and increased uncertainty. In some cases, federal or state funding priorities adjust as well, redirecting money toward new security measures or aid programs related to the sanctioned region. Although sanctions are primarily economic, they often exist alongside heightened military readiness. U.S. troops may find themselves deployed to allied nations as a show of force, or assigned to missions that protect supply routes, secure airspace, or deter potential retaliation. This extended posture can translate into longer deployments, increased training cycles, and greater strain on service members and their families. At home, military bases may see shifts in funding or priorities as Congress reallocates resources in response to changing global tensions. Many towns across America revolve around military installations or defense contractors. When foreign policy shifts, these local economies can feel the shockwaves. Sanctions that disrupt trade might also affect industries providing parts, maintenance, or support for military operations. This can lead to job cuts or delayed projects, creating a ripple effect through local businesses. Conversely, some regions may see growth if the government ramps up spending on certain weapon systems or logistics networks in response to international crises. A prominent domestic consequence of sanctions, especially against energy exporters, is the rise in energy prices. Higher fuel costs filter into transportation, food distribution, and household utilities. Military families, many of whom live on fixed allowances or moderate salaries, are particularly sensitive to these changes. Rising costs can reduce morale, make recruitment more challenging, and force service members to take on secondary employment or debt to make ends meet. Sanctions also shape how the public perceives foreign policy. When Americans feel the domestic squeeze, whether through inflation or reduced access to certain goods, debates about the merits of sanctions intensify. Soldiers and veterans often become part of that conversation, both as citizens and as people whose livelihoods are intertwined with national defense. This public discourse can influence elections, congressional priorities, and ultimately the future trajectory of U.S. foreign policy. While sanctions can be an effective tool of statecraft, over-reliance on them may generate unintended consequences. Countries targeted by U.S. sanctions often seek new trading partners or develop parallel financial systems, weakening the leverage of American policy over time. As global alliances shift, the U.S. military may face more complex security environments. In this sense, today's sanctions can shape tomorrow's defense strategies, with soldiers adapting to new missions that didn't exist a decade earlier. Acknowledging these domestic impacts is the first step towards supporting U.S. soldiers and their families. Policymakers can consider measures like cost of living adjustments, improved housing allowances, mental health support, and stronger communication about why deployments occur. By connecting the dots between foreign policy decisions and military life, leaders can help service members feel less like pawns in a geopolitical chess game and more like valued participants in a national strategy. Foreign policy may unfold on the global stage, but its consequences arrive at American doorsteps, in grocery bills, in military base budgets, and in the well-being of soldiers and their families. Economic sanctions are often framed as precise instruments aimed at adversaries abroad, yet they inevitably send ripples through the home front. Understanding these connections is essential if the U.S. hopes to maintain a resilient military and a stable society.
As debates over sanctions continue, one principle remains clear. Policies designed to protect national interests abroad must also safeguard the people who defend those interests at home.